can turn the world on with a smile. You can take a nothing day and suddenly make it all seem worthwhile. When it's you, girl, and you should know it. With each glance and every little movement you show it. Love is all around, no need to fake it. You can never down, why don't you take it? You're gonna make it after all.
Ladies, 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 ladies. Oh, ladies. So I think we're pretty clear why I've never accepted invitations to sing in a band before. Hey everybody, it's me, Rose, singing along with Sparks to the song Ladies. Because that's been my past couple of days. They've been packed with pussy, packed with ladies, packed with amazing strong women. A major kick in the ass to exactly what I've needed after days of being a shut-in and despairing and crying, which is why I haven't recorded until today, even though I messaged Sanchez on, Wednesday, saying, hey, I'm going to record tomorrow. And Sanchez, let me apologize for that. And here's the thing about me. The minute I say I'm going to do something is usually the next minute when I'm absolutely not going to. It's a thing that I'm working on. So I apologize for that. One day I'll start an episode without apologizing. One day I also won't be thrown off by the fact that I can hear my neighbor upstairs walking around. And I will realize that they cannot hear me and everything is just fine. But still, I feel a little weird when I'm talking and hearing people walking around. Who cares? We've already discussed this ad nauseum before. Now I'm going to start singing Nausea by X. Nausea, bloody red underwear, nausea. Okay, again, I'm sorry. So yeah, originally I was going to talk all about my dentist visit. I'm not. Let me go ahead and just wait and do that when I return next week to the dentist because I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be making several return trips to the dentist. We'll talk about that another time. Now is not that time because if it were, I would start singing Death Dentist by Jazz Butcher, and I think we've had enough singing from me today. But hey, there's 3 new exciting bands, new to you maybe, bands to go look for. You can look for Sparks, you can look for X, and you can look for the Jazz Butcher. And that's a little ear window to my world. So back to the ladies. Bum ba bum ba. So on Thursday, when I thought I was going to record and then did not, it was because I ran into my friend Kitty. Well, okay, I was walking to the corner market. I heard somebody yelling my name out of their window, and it was my friend Kitty, because Kitty lives in my neighborhood, and yet we don't spend much time with each other because we have our things. But that's changing, and we're spending more time with each other, partially because she's leaving her husband and moving into her own space, also in my own same neighborhood. She won't be able to see me walking back and forth to the market anymore and text me when she sees me to say, oh, you were dressed really cute today. And I would text back, you like my plaid shirt lesbian look, do ya? And she laughed, if one laughs in a text. But anyway, she yelled my name out, and because I was on my way to go get some evil Pepsi, and she's been laid up with a boot, not a bout, not a boot, not a Canadian mispronunciation. It's not a mispronunciation. How cunty! Look at that fucking American imperialism just kicking right in. Just assuming that because somebody sounds different, it's a mispronunciation. See how ingrained that shit is? You would never think that I would say something like that. And yet, boom, there it popped out. We all have so much to grow and learn from. So anyway, um, yes, poor kitty. She is on the injured list. And so she called to me from her window for me to swing by and deliver a piece of mail for her to the corner mailbox. That's right. I did a little posty work. First I'm insulting how Canadians speak, and then I do a little fake little poser posty work for my friend Kitty. Kitty's going to be looking after my cat while I'm gone in Paris. Maybe that's why I'm nicknamed her Kitty. Also, because she is obsessed with cats. That might be another reason why I nicknamed her Kitty. Um, and we just had a super great chat. I had never been inside her apartment before, um, mainly because, well, who cares? And it's going to be even more exciting once she moves into her own space and leaves her husband and stepson. Oh my God, that'll be awesome. Um, Yeah, Kitty is somebody who I think I've mentioned before, and she's a very open book about this, and I'm not using her real name anyway, but she is a former heroin addict, among other things, but has been sober for at least a decade, more than a decade, because she was sober when I met her in 2002 or 3, maybe. When we were acquainted when I lived here in Portland before. Um, and she works for the prison system, and she's getting a master's degree in social work, and she is covered in tattoos and is just fierce as shit. And she's somebody who, I think I've said this before, when you encounter other people who have gone through lots of struggle and lots of loss, um, you can you kind of like, oh, there's my brood, there's my team, that's my person. And you skip the small talk, that painful, horrible small talk right away, and you get straight into the deep discussions. And that's how it always is with her, which is why I value her so much. So, but it also exhausted me and made me not feel so chatty when I came back from my little errand. So that's my excuse for not recording Thursday as planned. Because if I talk too much with another person, then all of the fuck I want to do afterwards is come home and introvert. And look, I had just gone out the day before to the dentist. So, oh my God, I had conversations with people 2 days in a row. Granted, very different conversations, but still, that can be very exhausting for me because when I'm conversating with people in real time, in real life, and in real person, I really put my all to it, and I tend to get very, very excited like a happy, chatty Cathy little hyper puppy. And then when I'm done, I am depleted and exhausted, and all I want to do is hide for the world, from the world, not for the world. Although you could say it's beneficial for the world because, goddamn, I know that I can be exhausting to be around. I should also mention that Kitty knows exactly who Lurch is. You know, that hot piece of man ass that I've mentioned in the past. Um, And she also agreed that he is a hot piece of man ass to be avoided at all costs, just from her sober observations of him. Because she also will go to that same pub just to have ginger beer, although I've never seen her when I've been there because, like most people, she works during the day. Um, so yeah, that was Thursday. Was hanging out and having a real time visit with a real time friend and a real time lady, which was also nicely timed because my main friend here that works at the cinema and that I get to see once in a while, she was out of town for a week. And when people go on vacation, I will not message them or contact them at all because I don't want people to look at their screens when they're on vacation. Especially somebody that I know is trying to kind of get all of that under control. So I was feeling a little bit of my own selfish loss, and while dealing with some new things like the dentist and stuff. So it was a nicely timed little postal delivery, I guess you could say. Oh, and the other good thing that came out of getting to visit Kitty was I will be able to help her move. She mentioned that she was going to needed some moving boxes, and I actually saved a bunch of mine because they're expensive as hell, and I had a place to store them. So I get to save her that expense and that Craigslist hassle. And I also have plastic tubs that I'm not using that she can help with her move, and I can physically help with her move. And why am I excited about that? Because I like to fucking help people for one thing. I like to feel useful for another thing. And finally, she's going to be looking after my cat for 2 weeks while I'm in Paris. And so it's really nice that I already know something that I can do to kind of demonstratively express my gratitude. My God, I'm sounding corny this morning. Go ahead and mush me. Get it? Corn, mush. Okay. So that was awesome. I feel like there was something else about hanging out with her that was super great, but now I can't remember. Oh yeah, tomorrow she's having a yard sale next weekend, but tomorrow she's inviting people over to pick through things that she wants her friends to have first dibs on before she tries to sell them. Because she is like I am. She will hang on to things knowing that there's certain people that it would be perfect for, and she just hangs on to it until she has a chance to give it to that person. Like she's given me some coats, some vintage things that way in the past. Okay, who cares? I'm done with that. Listen to me. I'm done with that. I've talked about one friend. Fuck that. Fuck that. Fuck you, Kitty. You don't need to talk about you anymore. I'm done. Meow, meow, meow. But it was also nice to get to tell her about the fact that I was nervous going out on a play date on Friday with Joy from the book club. Somebody that I haven't spent time with before outside of book club, except when we walked home from it. And so it was just nice having somebody else to kind of face to face talk about how weird and nervous that is. Because she understands that Kitty is similar to me and that we can both be very outgoing and very sociable and very engaging. And apparently, I have been described recently by more than one person to my face as gregarious, but who also absolutely needs to fucking shut down and shut out the rest of the world in order to regain that energy back up again. So that's also super great to have in a friend. Who cares? My God, I'm like an Oprah show right now. And let me just say this. I don't know if I've ever watched a full episode of Oprah. I think I had this deep-rooted, deep-seated, full-pantsed, rancid resentment towards what I felt like was her usurping the legendary Phil Donahue. I know. I wanted to say that with a straight face because I really do mean it. Isn't that weird? It's like, God damn you, Oprah. You're why Phil Donahue went away. Because, look, you children weren't there back in the dawn of TV like I was. You don't see how things changed. And Phil Donahue was one of the good ones in terms of white men back then, you know? And I felt like look, I would never want to deny a black woman her own TV show. Shout out to Wendy Williams. But I also think there should be enough room for all because we so rarely get examples of awesome, progressive, feminist white men. And, they're important too because white men will look to other white men as examples far quicker than they're going to look towards any women as an example of patterning their behavior. And so when all you see is a landscape of shitty white men, then that's what white men accept as being normal. Okay, you really thought maybe I could get through an episode without doing that? The whole dissing on white men thing. Someday someday. What would happen if I actually managed to do an entire episode without one misandrist comment? I know Sandra just thought I was saying her name for a second. Misandrist. Okay. So, speaking of that, well, we'll get to speaking of that in a minute. So Friday I went out on a play date with a new lady adult friend that I'm trying to make. And we went to the gorge. We took the Columbia shuttle bus out to the wonderful Multnomah Falls. Joy's been living here for about a year, and isn't all that experienced with public transportation. She's a car owner, but not necessarily. She hasn't been driving around a lot because she doesn't know her way, and it sucks to get lost. So she's mainly just been walking and had some really, literally shitty, because it's all colon related health problems during the time that she moved here that just laid her out for a month or two. So she's it's been a rough first year here, which I can relate to having a rough first year here. Absolutely. Boy, can I. Yes, sirree doodles. So we rode the bus together, and it was my chance to find out, hey, lady, why did you move to Portland from Seattle? Because they're not that different of a places, and the cost of living isn't that dramatically different compared to all the people moving up here from the Bay Area. And it turns out it was because she left her husband of 50 years. That's right, 50, 50, not 15. 50. Now, I don't know that they were married for 50 years so much as they were together for 50 years. But she's got a 45-year-old son, and she's got 2 or 3 other daughters, and I think she has 5 or 6 grandkids. So it could be conceivable that she was married for the entire 50 years. That maybe that doesn't just include the dating portion. Oh, did I mention she's older than me? Because, yeah, otherwise she would have been married when she was 3 years old, because let's all remember I'm 53. Oh, also, apparently I have a baby face. 2 people were once again shocked by my age. One was Kitty, who is my age, but she spent a lot of time in the sun. And then Joy just straight out told me that I had a baby face. She thought I was turning 44 in August and not 54. And, it's, when you feel like shit, it's nice to hear that, hey, maybe you don't look like shit. So that was cool. But yeah, Joy not only left her husband of 50 years, she did it right around Thanksgiving. Joy is a fucking storybook character as far as I'm concerned. Because in ending her marriage, it apparently blew her family up completely, to the point where she's it's not that she's no longer welcome exactly. Well, her son has said, nope, you can't see me or the grandkids unless you get back with dad. Yeah, that's cool. She does have relationships with her daughters, but they're all still super resentful of the fact that she left their dad. Like they don't understand it. They don't understand the fact that if she didn't finally get the fuck out, she was just dying inside. And what finally made this happen, I don't know why I'm telling you somebody else's story, because I guess I don't feel like my story is so interesting for a change. And also because it's amazing to hear somebody make such a balls out decision and stick through it and go through a lot of trials and tribulations as a result of it and still stick through it and thrive. Because don't we all want examples of that in our lives? Aren't we sometimes tired of feeling that we're the only ones fighting a certain battle? So isn't it nice hearing somebody else's battles? So let me tell you some more about Joy's battles. Okay, here we go. Her husband was an alcoholic and a Catholic who still goes to mass all the time. She is seems to be a fairly atheist, I guess would be the best way to put it. She's certainly anti-religious. Um, and she's also one of the first women that I've spent time with who can sound as much of a misandrist. Am I pronouncing that right? As a man hater. She can sound as much as of a man hater as I can. Um, it could be from a lot of hard earned experiences with them. But the other thing that makes this whole thing such a storybook character to me is the fact that she, like her, okay, I'm not telling this very well, and I'm super sorry. I'm doing this without any index cards today because I just didn't feel like writing, because I knew that if the thought of writing would just like, I don't feel like doing anything, let me just get this out, because if I don't get this out, then it's not gonna happen at all. Okay, I'm sorry about that voice. My cat's looking at me now. Okay, so, what makes this a story makes her seem like such a storybook character to me, and like why all of this was so dramatic for her family. Her family had always been very insular because they had lived abroad in France. Her husband, she was in the military. This is what a fucking badass Joy is. Let me just keep backing up here. She's originally from South Dakota, a town of about 1,400 people, not a lot going on. She somehow got to make I think it was like a high school trip or something to DC. And so she got to see the Smithsonian's and the embassies, and just like, oh, there's a world outside of South Dakota where everybody knows your goddamn business. And I want more of that world. How do I get to that world? How do I get to Europe? I want to do these things. And she had the fucking wherewithal. Like, for her, the military was her way out of South Dakota. She became a registered nurse and just kept sticking with it until she got stationed in France. And I guess that's where she met her husband, because that's where, I don't know if all of her children were born, but certainly a few of them were born there. And not in Paris proper, but out more in one of the provinces where it's, I mean, Paris is gorgeous, obviously I'm going there, but in more of like a pastoral country setting. So in a way, still kind of isolated like South Dakota. And then they were further isolated by the language barrier, because back in her day in high school, because again, let's remember, she was married for 50 years. So I'm going to guess she's at least 70. Because I know she talked about being an RN when she was like 19 or something, or anyway. So for her generation in high school, foreign language wasn't even an option. It wasn't even a thing that was taught. So her family was really isolated, for socially and all of that. So that's part of why it was why it's so intense for her family dealing with this now, because they've been each other's social structure in some ways more than friendships have been, maybe. And also their house was like the center where for every single holiday, that's where everybody gathered. So all of her kids, all of the grandkids, they would all be there at the family's house, and other extended relatives would come there. So apparently on the fateful Thanksgiving, her brother-in-law would normally come and visit for 10 days. This is her husband's brother, who apparently is also an alcoholic and a deadbeat, and just a real bummer, and a real just super unpleasant and stressful to have around for 10 days, as had been the case for decades of Thanksgivings where he would do this. And so that fateful Thanksgiving, she just asked her husband, hey, could he just maybe stay for 5 days instead of 10? Because it's a real burden for me. She was also working at the time after being an RN for a bunch of years. She was in real estate for 30 years. So she was a stay-at-home mom for a significant portion, but not entirely portion of her child's child rearing years. I think she went back to work when her son was 13 years old. And he's got a lot of resentment for that too, for the fact that she wasn't a working mom while his sisters were in high school, but she was when he was even though all he did when he came home from school would be like, "Hi, Mom, I'm home," and then go disappearing off to his room. He just wanted to know that she was going to be there to take care of his every need in case a need came up, because that's what he had learned from her husband and from her behavior. Anyway, she knows all that. It's part of her awakening. Why am I going down that path? Wrong path. So she's asked her husband, "Hey, 5 days instead of 10 for your brother to come and visit and make my life miserable and drain our household." And her husband said no. And so she just sat there and was like, wife, brother, wife, brother, wife, brother. Oh, he's choosing the brother. Well, then I guess you don't need the wife anymore. See you, bye. And just before Thanksgiving, as all the family were gathering, she left. That's a hell of a fuck you and a door slam. That's a hell of a fuck you and a door slam. And I told her, I was like, dude, that's a hell of a door slam. I mean, it's a shame she couldn't have done it at Christmas to really drive the point home. But doggy, that's hardcore. And so, when I'm explaining, like, oh, well, I had actually left my husband to move here to Portland too, but we were only together for 10 years. Like my experience is just nothing compared to like what a huge life, I mean, mine was life changing too, but I mean, such a grand scale with children and grandchildren and all the ramifications involved that she went through. But her response was, well, that's a decade. That's still a significant portion of your life. And it's like, oh, okay, this is awesome. Like, we have different experiences, shared experiences, but we're not comparing them saying, like, well, mine's worse than yours, or yours is easier than mine, and all that kind of stuff that people can easily get into, especially me sometimes. So that was super great. It's just, I don't know. I'm not explaining how awesome it was. It's kind of hard. It's kind of like why I don't take pictures in nature so much, because nature is something to be experienced, and to try to trap it on a photo doesn't really work. So trying to trap this experience with her, relating it one-sided to people who don't know her and don't know me, I'm really not doing a good job. My goodness, I suck at this. But one thing that I realized, like, while we were hanging out together and like swapping our life stories and experiences and stuff like that, is that I seem like a storybook character to her too. Um, generationally, there's a huge difference. I mean, she's got a granddaughter in college who, as she kind of said with the dismay tone, like, yeah, she shaved the side of her head, but it's growing back. She's had it every color too, and I'm like, it's okay. I've had my hair every color also, and had parts of mine shaved. Like, she's kind of, I think she's in the process of shaking a lot of preconceived judgments, and still, I don't know, it's just, I'm not explaining this very well, and I'm sorry to be so frustrated with myself and to keep apologizing for it, but it's just amazing seeing somebody in their early 70s going through such an awakening and shifting of reality and acceptance and judgments. And it's just so profound being in the presence of that while they're doing it. That just is really inspiring and kicking my ass, and I can't express it without sounding like a cliche right now. I'm very sorry. But she, um, and I asked her, I was like, so would you say that you had a sheltered, background and experience? And she's like, oh yeah. And so when I'm telling her about like moving out at 17 and like what I used to take pictures of versus now, and like I said to her, I was like, well, have you ever seen footage where bands are playing and you can't understand what they're singing, and all the people are like smashing each other in the audience or doing stage dives, and her eyes just got real big, and I was like, that was me. Like, I've done stage dives before. And she's like, oh, I mean, like the music of my generation that I've just been listening to again on Pandora, like, that's Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Simon and Garfunkel, and Bread. Bread. I laughed at bread because my ex is really into bread in a non-ironic way. And she's like, "Why is that funny?" And I said, "Oh, because," and I explained all that to her. Like, people have a stupid idea of cool and uncool, and they're kind of, like a real 70s pastiche kind of. And I was like, "Oh, I'll shut up now." Um, but yeah, it's just like she's never done she's done zero drugs ever in her life. And as far as she knows, her kids never got involved in them at all. So when and I'm talking about the homeless population and just all sorts of things, it's like she's hearing it for the first time from a flesh and blood human being versus maybe just seeing it as part of a news story. Um, So I guess what I'm saying here is we're going to be a constant source of learning and amusement with each other. I'm hoping. Um, so anyway, we went to Multnomah Falls and had a little picnic on the bench there. And I walked more than I thought I would uphill, but I couldn't walk all the way up to the top of the falls because my asthma and stuff, like I was wheezing too much, and decided to turn back, which she was totally cool with. I think she wanted me to turn back sooner because as an RN, she's especially sensitive, which is also great. Um, um, and when we were sitting down eating, we were just talking about like the books that we were reading. Hey, that's cool to do. My God, I could never do that with my ex because although he was a voracious reader, he gave zero fucks about what I was reading. He just wanted to tell me about what he was reading. So I'm currently reading a biography of Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir, and she just smiled because she couldn't remember the exact Sartre quote that she really liked. But we just talked. Suddenly we were just having this long conversation about existentialism and grinning each other like idiots. Like, ooh, hooray! We have somebody to talk about this with. Yay, lady nerds! It was a beautiful thing. She's currently reading The Picture of Dorian Gray, which is an excellent novella. If you've never read it, it's one of those classic stories that everybody should read. And it's a quick and easy read, and I highly recommend it. So there you go. Since I'm not having a book club podcast, I'll just spit out stuff that you should read. Pick up The Picture of Dorian Gray and think about morality and aging. Go ahead. So we did all that. We looked at Multnomah Falls and dealt with the crowds, and had great conversation the entire time. And then I made her laugh. She is not a funny person herself, and I know that right now and always in the podcast, I am never a funny person. And yet, when I'm in person having conversations with people, that's when it happens. I can't be funny looking at my cat. I'm sorry. I just can't be funny sitting here and talking by myself. I'm very sorry. But this was never meant to be a funny podcast. In fact, I think it's really just the diary of a mentally ill middle-aged woman living in Trump's America. Oh, Trump. Okay. So then we took the bus from Multnomah Falls to Rooster Rock, which I had promised sand to walk along because it's one of those river beaches. And I was like, oh yeah, we can, like, I'm not going to go swimming or nothing, but it'll be nice to walk along the sand because the trail there in the non-beach area is not worth writing home about or going along or risking stinging nettles, but we can walk along the sand and that'll be lovely. And so we get out of the bus there at Rooster Rock, and when we get off the bus, I noticed that there's a dude with a camera, and I just think, oh, he's just some guy filming, like he's just got instead of using a GoPro, he's using this bigger, fancier on the shoulder camera. Well, that's weird, but maybe he's part of some pro windsurfer dude that's down there windsurfing like I saw last year. But then I noticed this other guy in a tie and a button-down blue shirt and a Channel 2 microphone. And I'm like, oh. And he was making a beeline right towards me. Yeah, that's right. Yep, I'm getting off the bus and about to like show Joy where the restrooms are. And this guy walks up to me with his Channel 2 microphone and asks if he can talk to me real quick about the shuttle and holiday traffic. And I just shrug like, yeah, sure. I'm wearing my giant plaid shirt and my sunglasses, and my hair looks awful, and I give zero fucks. Sure, you can interview me on camera because this is what happens to me. I take a new lady friend out for a first adult play date, and I get interviewed for TV. Cut to the chase, I didn't make the cut, and I didn't see myself on TV. But anyway, the guy first said, what is your name? And please spell it out. So I spelled out my first and last name. And then he asked about the shuttle bus and were we taking it to beat the holiday traffic and all that? Did we find it useful for that? And I said, well, I don't really deal with holiday traffic or any traffic because I'm 53 years old and I've never had a driver's license. And the reporter just looked at me with big eyes, and he's like, "That's so awesome! You must have always lived in big cities. Are you from Portland your whole life? Is that why?" I'm like, "No." And he goes, "Oh, Manhattan." I'm like, "Why do people always assume that I'm from New York?" And he goes, "Well, because that's just another major public transportation hub where people live without a driver's license." And I said, "You are correct, sir, in that assumption. And yet I'm not from there. I am from Northern Virginia." And then his eyes got even bigger, as if that was a possible thing, because he was like, "Where in Northern Virginia are you from?" And I said, "I am from Springfield." And he high-fived me. "I'm from Arlington." He's from Arlington, not me. Springfield and Arlington, we're kissing cousins there in Northern Virginia. And so he high-fived me and said that he hasn't driven since he moved to Portland. And I was like, well, good for you. I'm not a non-driver out of any ecological or political statement, but purely from anxiety, which I did not explain on camera because, hey, I'm not completely stupid all of the time, just some of the time. So I continued and said, yeah, I take the shuttle because it's a great way for those of us that don't drive to get to the gorge and to see this. And if you do drive, it's a great way to beat the traffic and to avoid the parking. And because it's a holiday weekend, this gorge shuttle bus, it normally runs Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, but it's also going to be running on Monday and Tuesday just for the holiday weekend. I mean, I sounded like a fucking shill for the TriMet shuttle bus. Like I could not have sounded more professional and endorsing of this service. I sounded like a PSA for it. Like even like Joy afterwards, she's like, "Yeah, I can see why you originally thought about going to college for the radio." She's like, "You are natural in front of the camera or on the microphone." And I was like, "I am not. If you were to hear me podcast, you would find out that that is not true. It's only because I'm talking to a human being in the flesh." Okay. So anyway, I did that. I did a little interview. I was like, "Yep, see, Joy, this is what it's like hanging out with me." Random people, just TV crew walks up to me. Here we go. And so that was all done. And when I came home, I don't have TV. I don't have live TV. Neither does Joy. Joy doesn't even own a television. She's one of those. Um, I'm always suspicious of those, but also kind of weirdly admirational of them because I wish I could live without an idiot box. I wish it wasn't my fill-in substitute for people. I'm going down a path that we don't need to go on again. Okay, I'm sorry. Speaking of paths, so there we were. And I was like, "Do use the restrooms? Restrooms are there." And I was like, "Yeah, the stairs go down to the beach." And so I saw like the first staircase, and I started walking down because you couldn't see the sand from the top of the staircase. All I could see was the river part of the river beach. But then I realized, oh, I'm not seeing any sand because there's no sand right now. I mean, it's there, but it's all underwaters. Underwaters. Yes, plural. Wouldn't it be okay? It's all underwater. Um we had a super long rainy season, as you've heard me kvetch a little bit about before, although I think I also said how much I enjoyed having to not give an excuse for staying home all the time because the weather was so shitty. It's like, yay, I'm allowed to be an introvert without anybody noticing or caring. Um and yeah, there's new plant life like trees that have kind of sprouted out you could see how shallow the water was, and by shallow I mean it came up to my knees. Um, but it just I mean I just kept saying, like, I don't believe it. Where's the sand? Where, like, this is it was such a dramatic difference um of last year at the same time. It was just all sand. People were flying kites. People were going out into the water. Some of the ways where there was, um, to do their windsurfing and stuff. But so much of it was just big, flat, easy to walk on sand. And it's just now, it was just water lapping up to the bottom step of the stairs. And I was like, well, maybe it's just here inland. Let's keep walking down. And so we walked down to another flight of stairs, and it's like, yep, flooded here too. And then if we had kept walking, we would have hit that clothing optional beach as immortalized in Peen Peen Peen. Um, and she's like, yeah, we can skip that. And I said, yeah, I agree with you completely. Um, but I shared with her what the experience was like of normally being a woman who gets far too much male attention when I'm out in the world alone, fully clothed. And there I was last year walking around with my camera, experiencing men walking along a path fully alone, fully naked, and them having to feel vulnerable in this situation. So that was somebody that I could share the experience with, who understood and was like, yeah, right on, fuck those men. I don't think she said that. But it was just, I just kept saying over and over again, I can't believe it. Where's the beach? Where's the sand? Where's the beach? Where's the fucking sand? I also called her dude a lot of times. I'm so glad that this is somebody who's had kids and grandkids, because at least she understands weirdos of different generations, one would hope. Um, yeah, it blew my mind. There was no beach to walk on, so we couldn't do that. And then we sat at the picnic table and had another picnic and discussion. And she fed a squirrel a carrot, because man, those squirrels were aggressive. Um, they just wanted to, because they get fed all the time by people. That's why. So they just kept jumping up and jumping up, and I was like, I don't want rabies. I don't want rabies. Um, and then she fed one. So there. Um, so yeah. No sand. Lots of water. Lots of weirdly strange new growth cropping up on the sand, thanks to the water being there, aggressive squirrels. And as we were about to fill our water bottles and see when the next bus was going to arrive, the next bus arrived. And we jumped on it and um, and then jumped back to Gateway and took the regular city bus all the way home. And it was a city bus that she hadn't taken before. And I was able to explain to her where she would be able to get off after I got off the bus, and to walk home and all of that. And she was, by the end of it, she was still smiling. She was saying that, like, she had a great day. It exceeded her expectations. I'm not sure how low her expectations were, but I did share with her that I do have the philosophy of always have low expectations, so that way you can only be pleasantly surprised instead of bitterly disappointed, which she laughed at. Like I said, she's smiling a lot. She obviously felt comfortable enough with me to share very personally, very quickly. So there was none of that forced intimacy that I've talked about before, where I overshare, but the other person isn't that way. Um, it's very interesting how her mind works in terms of looking at patterns and being very analytical. It's just that instant comfort level that I don't always have with other human beings. And it's like, oh, this is so fucking refreshing. And so we're planning on hanging out again. Yeah, that's the excitement thing. Not next week, because she's going to be going out of town to visit one of her daughters, which is awesome. And I've got the dentist on Monday, and I have to report for jury duty next Friday. I don't know if I've mentioned that. We'll see how that goes. I've got anyway, who cares? but yeah, there's other stuff that we want to do. She's excited about doing it. She's excited about me teaching her the public transportation system. Um, I know that I have a lot of energy for her to deal with, so I'm going to try to temper that. How do I know that? Because when we were talking about drugs and I guess as an RN, she was a pediatric nurse, so she didn't deal with adults with drugs. So that's why, like, I'm sitting there explaining the difference of like cocaine and speed versus heroin in terms of the effects on people, and I told her that yeah, the only drugs that I've ever done is like marijuana still, and I've tried speed before, and she's like why would you do that? Like, I don't like, you don't seem like somebody who needs any more energy. And like, I register like, oh, I know. Oh my God, I'm being a chatty Cathy again. I'm so sorry. Oh my God, I'm so fucking hyper because I've been inside for so long. And now I'm like, oh my God, I get to go outside. Sorry, that was really annoying that I just whispered in your ear. I forget that fucks up the volume if you're not on earbuds. But yeah, so we're gonna probably go to the Hoyt Arboretum together and maybe some other bus adventures. And yeah, I've got a new adult playmate. I'm very excited. Um and then of course, who should I run into on my city bus ride home? But Charles and his big new dog, Chief. He's very sweet. Um And it was okay, Charles, like, I never returned his phone calls, and I had explained already up front why I'm not hanging out with him in a way that wasn't going to be any kind of personal attack. And I didn't, when he asked like how I'd been doing, I didn't say, "Oh, I just got back from from the gorge with another friend that isn't you." Nope. I said like, "Oh, well, I had a dentist appointment on Wednesday, so I had to cry for a couple of days beforehand." And so it was all good. I found out about his new dog. There was no awkwardness, which was good because I know I'm going to run into him a fuck ton on the bus. Because if I'm not running into the cancer lady on the bus, I'm running into Charles. I ran into the cancer lady the day before on the bus. Oh, me and the seniors, they love me. I guess they put up with me. I guess I don't know. Um, and that's it. That's all I'm. This has been a rambling one. I'm sorry. Sorry, not sorry. Um, 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 um. I will say that some of this is also gonna like really be a good influence on me in terms of like I've talked all the time about how when I've got wide open time, then I've got no reason to worry about how fast I get anything done. Although I think I have to worry about my cat trying to drink the tea from my teacup. Hang on. But like the fact that I mentioned I'm reading this biography, and the fact that I mentioned it to Joy, and it's something that she's going to be interested in hearing more about. Now I feel like there's a fire lit under me to get this finished, so that way next time I see her, I can talk to her about it. And that's really good because I'm somebody that does need external motivation to get things done. I don't think I'm unusual, weird, or damaged because of that. That's just stating a fucking fact. And the fact that Kitty is sober, well, so's Joy, except for she enjoys a glass of wine. Also is helps me with the fact that I want to smoke even less pot. I've been cutting back. I used to smoke at least an ounce a month. Now I'm down to probably less than half an ounce a month. But I'd like to be less than that. I'd like it to be something where I don't want it every single day, where it's not weird for me to take a break from it as I'm doing right this very moment because I'm out and I'm letting myself be out instead of walking out to get some. I'm letting myself be out for the day. And my goal is to let myself be out for tomorrow and to be out of it on Monday and to maybe wait until Tuesday or Wednesday. But my goal beyond that would to be, hey, don't even think about when you're going to get any more, you know? But it's kind of the same way when I'm out of chocolate, I get a little bit concerned about when there might be chocolate in my house again. But the difference is I can have chocolate in my house without touching it, unless I'm high. But I can't have marijuana in my house without using it. And so that's what I want to get to. Because I don't like to be a slave to nothing. I don't like crutches. But it does help me sleep when it's really fucking hot at night. Um, but as I fill my time with more positive things, um, that's the benefit. We should all fill our lives with more positive things because the world is damaging enough as it is, and we've got to fucking fortify ourselves. That's the lesson, right? We've got to fortify ourselves. And that's one of the things that I like that Joy said. She said that she's working on self-defense. And I mentioned, yeah, I want to take some self-defense classes. And that's when she's like, oh no, I'm just talking about like defending myself. Because she had to struggle for herself for so long in the past 50 years that she's struggling to regain it and to not let anybody else diminish it or take it away from her again. And how fucking awesome is it to meet someone who is comfortable enough to say that after making such a huge, badass, strong decision and upheaval in her life? God damn, I'm lucky. So that's where I am. I'm feeling lucky from the past couple of days and the people that I've been around and from how my dentist appointment went. But we'll wait and talk about that next time because I'm going to talk about some prior dentist experiences too. Because the other thing that I've been thinking is one thing that I meant to do. Me first doing segments and then doing this podcast, my big motivation for doing the segments was just as a way of pulling out of my isolation while I was working through leaving my husband and working towards finding my voice, which I'm still working on the voice part because, see, look how gross it sounds right now. But the other thing is I've completely lost my train of thought. Adderall. Oh, I know what it was. Doing episodes versus just segments was because at some point I wanted to start talking about stories from my past. Because, my present is pretty much kind of being the same thing. Like, I struggle with depression, I struggle with anxiety, I struggle with the battle between isolation and being social and blah, blah, blah. And, I've done that to death. We've heard that. We've heard all that. So I want to start talking more about my stories from the past, like what it was like moving out at 17, what other stuff was like. I haven't quite figured out how to do it. But that's what I'm working towards. Does that matter? Do you care? I don't know. But I'm feeling good. And it's Saturday. And it's only 1:00. And look, I've accomplished this. I read another 30 pages of the biography on the patio this morning. And I've got my bills and stuff together that I'm gonna go tackle. And I've got my podcast done. And that's it. That's all. It's really not much of anything except goodness. Except goodness. Fortify yourselves, people. Fortify yourselves. Self-defense. There you go. All right, bye.